Chrisean Rock did not just expose Blueface on camera. She may have handed investigators an execution date, gift-wrapped, and she looked straight into the lens while she did it. In one live stream, Chrisean Rock looked at Blueface and told him, "You know you have ended lives before," and then she kept going, because apparently destroying your own career in one sitting was not enough for her that day. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. If I am a detective still digging around the Ronny situation, I am not sleeping this week, because Chrisean Rock just confessed, on camera, to knowing exactly who Blueface is when the cameras turn off. Stay with me, because what she says after this gets so much worse, and the apology at the end might be the most disturbing part of all. Now before we go any further, let me make one thing crystal clear. Everything you are about to hear is commentary and opinion based on publicly available footage. Chrisean Rock and Blueface are public figures who broadcast their own lives, and nothing here is an accusation of guilt. But when two grown adults get on a stream watched by hundreds of thousands of people and start casually trading stories about how many bodies they have caught, we are allowed to ask questions. We are allowed to be uncomfortable. And baby, after watching this footage 3 times, I am very uncomfortable. Because either Chrisean Rock just destroyed Blueface with the truth, or Blueface and Chrisean Rock both think murder is a punchline, and honestly, I am not sure which option is worse. So let us rewind, because to understand how we got to murder confessions, you have to understand the weekend. A couple of days before this stream, Blueface and Chrisean Rock linked up in public for the first time in months. And the internet lost its mind, because if you have been following this saga, you know these two were supposed to be done. Finished. She was supposed to be in her faith era, in her motherhood era, in her healing era, and Blueface was supposed to be, well, Blueface, which means chaos with a check attached. But then the pictures started circulating. Chrisean Rock and Blueface at an event, sitting close, smiling, her touching his face, him letting her. And everybody immediately asked the same question. Is this a reunion? Is this love? Is this a relapse? The answer, as we would soon find out, was none of the above. It was a business meeting with benefits. Now let me give you some context for anybody just tuning into this saga for the first time, because I know this story has more layers than a wedding cake, and it is easy to get lost. Blueface is a rapper out of Los Angeles who blew up off one song, and then figured out something way more valuable than music. He figured out that his personal life could generate more money than his catalog ever would. Chrisean Rock came up through a reality show that was basically built around her volatility, and she became a star not because of her talent, but because she is incapable of being boring. Together, they built one of the most watched, most toxic, most profitable relationships in internet history. Breakups, arrests, reunions, tattoos of each other's faces, a baby, a reality empire. Every low point got monetized. Every high point got clipped. And the reason this newest chapter matters more than all the others is simple. They have fought before. They have broken up before. They have embarrassed each other before. But they have never, not once, accused each other of taking lives on camera before. That is a door that once you open it, you cannot close it, and both of them walked through it on the same night. Now here is where Chrisean Rock made her first critical error, and it happened before the stream even started. She went on camera and admitted, with her own mouth, that she and Blueface made $60,000 in a single weekend just by hanging out together. $60,000. For hanging out. She said it like it was a blessing, and honestly, financially, maybe it was. But what Chrisean Rock did not seem to calculate is that when you admit the relationship is a revenue stream, you cannot then act shocked when the person treating it like a revenue stream does not want to cuddle after the camera's cut. She wanted the check and the fairy tale. Blueface, to his credit or his shame, depending on how you look at it, only ever advertised the check. And that gap, that canyon between what Chrisean Rock thought this weekend was and what Blueface knew it was, is the fault line that split open on that stream. And I need you to hold on to that $60,000 number, because we are coming back to it, and when we do, it is going to hit completely different. Because the shopping trip that money paid for is where this whole situation went from awkward to genuinely alarming. And let us talk about that $60,000 for one more minute, because the number itself tells a story. $2,400 for tickets, $5,800 for outfits. Those are the numbers that were floating around from that weekend, and do the math with me. They spent roughly $8,000 to look the part, and they cleared $60,000 for showing up. That is a return on investment that Wall Street would envy. And that is exactly the point. This was never romance. This was arbitrage. Blueface and Chrisean Rock are not a couple anymore. They are a joint venture, and the product they sell is the illusion that they might be a couple again. Every hug is inventory. Every argument is marketing. And the audience, all of us, we are not witnesses to a love story. We are the revenue model. Once you see that, you cannot unsee it, and everything that happened on that stream snaps into focus. The affection was the advertisement. The fight was the product drop. And the murder accusation, well, that was the limited edition release nobody ordered but everybody is talking about. So Blueface takes Chrisean Rock shopping. Burberry specifically. He is spending real money on her. Bags, jackets, outfits, the whole gesture. And on paper, this should be the soft life moment every woman on that Livestream comment section dreams about. Your man, or your ex, or your situation, or whatever Blueface is to Chrisean Rock this fiscal quarter, takes you into a luxury store and tells you to pick what you want. But she is not built for soft life. She is built for the trenches, and about 45 seconds into that Burberry visit, she starts shadow boxing in the middle of the store. Not playing around. Actually throwing combinations, moving her feet, slipping imaginary punches between the handbags. And Blueface, to his credit, tries to coach her. He starts giving her tips about her stance, telling her to switch her feet, telling her she is not a southpaw. And the whole thing has this bizarre energy, like watching a man try to train a storm. Now let us go back inside that Burberry one more time, because there is a detail in that footage that nobody is talking about, and it is the detail that explains the entire night. Watch Blueface's face while Chrisean Rock is dancing and sparring between the racks. He is not embarrassed. He is not amused. He is checking the camera. He is checking to make sure the moment is being captured, because a man who is in love watches the woman, and a man who is working watches the frame. And that tells you everything. To him, that store was not a store, it was a set. The bags were props. The staff were background extras. And Chrisean Rock, God bless her, thought she was the leading lady in a love scene, when in reality she was the talent in somebody else's production, and she did not even get a copy of the call sheet. I keep going back to that image, her throwing punches at the air, him watching the lens, because it is the whole relationship in one frame. She is swinging at ghosts. He is counting money. And the camera just keeps eating. Now look, I am not here to judge how anybody acts in a store, because we have all had our moments. But there was something about that scene that felt like a preview. She cannot turn it off. That is the thing about her that makes her magnetic on camera and exhausting in real life. She does not have a private mode. Everything is performance. Everything is intensity. Everything is at 11. And in Burberry, that was funny. Later that night, on the stream, that exact same inability to downshift is what turned a conversation into a catastrophe. Because when the cameras are rolling and Chrisean Rock feels cornered, she does not retreat. She loads up. And what she loaded up with that night was not an insult. It was an accusation that you cannot take back. And this is the part where I have to stop and ask you something. And I really want you to think about it before you answer in the comments. If you knew that spending one weekend with your ex would pay you $60,000, but you also knew that person was only there because the camera pays, would you go? Would your pride let you take that money? Because she took it. He offered it. And by the end of the weekend, one of them was crying and one of them was being called a killer on a live stream. So before you judge either of them, ask yourself what you would have done in that Burberry. Hold that answer. We are going to need it later. So let us set the scene, because the details matter here. The shopping is done, the clips are captured, and now they are in a car or a room. Camera is still rolling, and the vibe has completely shifted. She does not want to stream anymore. She says it plainly. She wants to hang out. She wants the version of Blueface that was rubbing on her and kissing on her all day, and she wants him without an audience. And this is the moment where Blueface says the quiet part out loud, the thing that this entire empire is built on. He tells her, no, the reason we are doing this is the stream. The reason we are doing this is the content. The stream is the point. And you can physically watch something break behind her eyes. Because in that sentence, Blueface confirmed what everybody watching already knew and what Chrisean Rock refused to accept. She was not on a date. She was at work. And unlike every other job on earth, nobody told her what the job actually was. And I need to be fair here, Because Blueface is not a monster in this scene. Not yet. He is being honest. Maybe the most honest he has ever been with her. He is telling her the terms, and the terms are transactional. But Chrisean Rock does not process transactions. Chrisean Rock processes devotion. So when he says this is about the stream, she hears, "I do not love you." And everything after that is a woman fighting for a relationship that was never on the table. She starts turning off his music. He tells her to chill. She escalates. He tells her this is not the Chrisean show. She gets louder. And then he says something that would be hilarious if it was not so revealing. He tells her he spent money today to make her feel special and asks what she did in return. And her answer, her actual answer, is "I appreciated it." And you can hear in his voice that for him, appreciation is not currency. For Blueface, currency is currency. And that is when the argument stops being about music or streaming or even money, and it becomes about what it is always about with these two: control. And here is something else I cannot stop thinking about. In that argument, Blueface kept repeating the same phrase over and over: calm down, calm down, calm down, like a man holding a remote control and pressing the volume button on a person. And every time he said it, she got louder, because that is what that phrase does. It is not de-escalation. It is dismissal dressed up as de-escalation, and he knows that. A man who has been with Chrisean Rock as long as Blueface knows exactly which buttons set her off, and he pressed every single one of them on camera, in sequence, like he had a checklist. The music comment, the little lady comment, the customer service comment, each one designed to produce a reaction, and each reaction immediately clipped and shipped. I am not saying she is innocent. She is a grown woman making her own choices. But I am saying he walked into that stream with a strategy, and she walked in with her heart, and strategy beats heart every single time. That is not a fair fight. That is a harvest. Let me also say this, because it needs to be said and nobody else is saying it. The fact that the word bodies was thrown around so casually on that stream should bother all of us on a deeper level than just this one story. In the culture that he comes from, in the world Chrisean Rock operates in, that word has weight. Real families have buried real sons behind that word. And to hear it used as an insult, as a flex, as content, is a reminder of how far the streaming economy has drifted from any sense of consequence. When everything is content, nothing is sacred. A death is a talking point. An accusation is a hook. A crying woman is a thumbnail. And I say that as someone who covers this world, who benefits from this world, which makes me complicit too. And I think about that more than you know. There is a version of this industry that could celebrate these two without feeding on them. But that version does not pay $60,000 a weekend. And so here we are, and here they are, and the meter is always running. And then it happens. The moment that is going to follow Chrisean Rock for the rest of her career. They are going back and forth. He is calling her masculine. She is telling him to stop playing with her. And out of nowhere, she says it. She tells him, "You know you have ended lives before." And then, because apparently once was not enough, she says it again. She tells him he is a real killer. She tells him the reason he is so dark inside is because of how many bodies he has caught. And the room goes still. Even through a screen, you can feel the oxygen leave. Because this is not shade. This is not your baby daddy is a bad person. This is a woman looking at the father of her child and announcing to the internet that he is a murderer. And she does not whisper it. She says it with her whole chest. Now, I want to be extremely careful with my language here, because these are real people and real accusations, and neither of them has been charged with anything related to this conversation. But I am not the one who put this on the internet. She put this on the internet. He sat there and let it be put on the internet. And the second those words left her mouth, this stopped being entertainment news and started being something else entirely, something with a case number attached. Because if you know anything about the cloud hanging over this family, you know exactly why those words landed the way they did. And if you do not know, do not worry. That is the next part of this story, and it is the part that changes everything. And here is the detail that I think is going to matter most when the dust settles. Chrisean Rock did not just make the accusation and move on. She built an argument around it. She said, when a person has a list like that, they are numb, they cannot separate evil from evil, they think they are untouchable. That is not a spur-of-the-moment insult. That is a theory. That is a woman constructing a profile in real time, in front of an audience, about a man she shares a child with. And whether she realized it or not, she was doing something that prosecutors and detectives do for a living. She was establishing character. She was establishing pattern. She was establishing motive on a live stream. Now, does that mean anything legally? I am not a lawyer, and I am not going to pretend to be one. But I know that in the court of public opinion, which is the only court these two actually live in, that kind of statement does not fade. It follows. It gets screenshotted, clipped, subtitled, and replayed every single time either of their names trend from now until the end of their careers. Because here is what makes this accusation so much heavier than regular stream drama. There is an open question that has been following Chrisean Rock for over a year now. A question about a man named Ronny, a man who was connected to her, a man who started asking for a paternity test, a man who could have complicated a very lucrative situation. And that man is no longer alive. He died, suddenly, shortly after making noise about that test. Now, I am not saying what happened. I am saying what the timeline looks like from the outside, and the timeline looks like this. A man says he wants proof of paternity. A man threatens to disrupt a $1 million machine, and then that man is gone. So when Chrisean Rock sits next to Blueface and says, "I know what you are, I know what you have done," she is not speaking in hypotheticals. She is speaking like a woman with a memory. And the internet heard it that way too. Because within hours, the clip was everywhere, and the comments were not saying, "Oh, she is being dramatic." The comments were saying, "Is this a confession? Is this a witness statement? Is this the break in the case?" And just when you think it cannot get any more chaotic, she turns the gun, metaphorically, on herself. Because in the same breath where she calls Blueface a killer, she starts talking about herself. She says, "I will end you." She says it out of anger, she says. But then, and this is the part that made my blood run cold, she starts walking it back in real time. She says, "I never ended nobody." But then she says, "He is bodies." And then she starts talking about what kind of person keeps a list like that, how a person with that kind of list has no soul, how they cannot tell evil from evil, because to them everything is a target. And you realize, listening to her, that she is not describing a stranger. She is describing someone she has studied, someone she has slept next to, someone she has a child with. She is giving a profile of a killer, and she is doing it from personal experience. So the question is not just, is Blueface dangerous? The question is, what does Chrisean Rock know, and why did she choose this moment to say it? And look, I know there is another way to see this. There is a version of this story where none of it is real, where Blueface and Chrisean Rock sat down before that camera turned on and said, "Okay, tonight we are going to give them murder," and they scripted this whole thing for the clips. Because let us not forget, these two are professionals at monetizing dysfunction. They have admitted that. So maybe the accusation is content. Maybe the tears are content. Maybe all of it is performance. But here is the problem with that theory, and it is a big one. If it is performance, then she is performing a confession. She is performing knowledge of a crime. And if it is not performance, then she just testified. Either way, she crossed a line you cannot uncross. And that is why I said what I said at the top. She made a mistake that could land her in prison, not because she did something on that stream, but because of what she said she knew. But we are not done, because after the stream cuts, after the clips go viral, she does something that in my opinion is almost more revealing than the accusation itself. She gets on camera again, alone this time, and she gives a monologue. And this monologue is where the mask fully comes off, not Blueface's mask, hers. She says, "Lord knows I wanted to go in his mouth for real." She says, "He had my card. I had the baby. I was not trying to go to jail." And then she says something that sounds like clarity until you actually listen to it. She says, "This is not really nothing but a business." She admits it is mutual. She admits she sees other people. She admits he sees other people. And for a second, you think, okay, she gets it. She finally understands the assignment. But then she keeps talking. She says, "I am numb to everything he is." She says, "He is trapped inside his own wrongdoing." She says, "He puts the next person down to lift himself up." And she is describing, with eerie precision, a textbook toxic dynamic, a cycle of devaluation and control. She is diagnosing the relationship while still volunteering to be inside it. And that is when I realized, this is not stupidity. This is something much sadder. This is a woman who can see the prison and keeps polishing the bars. And in that same monologue, She drops a detail that almost got lost in the chaos, but matters more than people realize. She mentions she has a fight coming up on September 19th. She says she is in training camp. She says she is trying to stay focused. And you sit there and think, focused on what? Because nothing about that weekend looked like focus. Nothing about flying out to stream with your ex, shopping at Burberry, arguing about music, and trading murder accusations looks like a woman in training camp. And it raises a real question about what the people around Chrisean Rock are doing. Where is her team? Where is her management? Where is one person in her life who can look at this and say, sis, the risk is not worth the reward? Because from the outside, it looks like nobody is protecting her from herself. And the people who profit from her chaos have every incentive to keep her chaotic. That is not management. That is farming. Now I want to pause here and check in with you, because we are about to go into the part of this story that honestly makes me angry, and I need to know where you stand before we do. So tell me in the comments right now, who do you believe? Do you believe Chrisean Rock when she says Blueface is a real killer? Do you believe her when she says she was just talking out of anger? Or do you think both of them are performing for the algorithm and none of it means anything? And the second question is the harder one. If you were her friend, her real friend, not a yes person on payroll, what would you tell her to do tomorrow morning? Because what she does next matters, not just for her career, but for her freedom. Type the word wake up if you think she needs to run, or type the word loyalty if you think she should stay. I am going to be reading every single one. And now we get to the detail that broke the internet all over again, the drink. Because just days before this stream, Chrisean Rock was seen at a club and people swore they saw her drinking while pregnant. She denied it. She said it was juice. And on its own, that is just another Tuesday in this saga. But watch what happens on the stream. There is a moment, and you can find the clip yourself, where someone asks about a bottle, and the conversation turns to drinking, and Chrisean Rock says something so shocking I had to rewind it 4 times to make sure I heard it right. She says, yes, I can. I can end the pregnancy tomorrow. It will not hurt me. And then someone off camera, trying to be funny or maybe trying to be real, says, you should do it because it is cold. And then another voice brings up the last time, saying, when she was pregnant before, they were doing all that smoking and drinking anyway. I also want to talk about the apology because I teased it at the top and I owe you that. At the end of the argument, after everything, after the accusations and the crying and the insults, Blueface leans in and gives this soft, almost gentle speech. He tells her he was not plotting against her. He apologizes if anything came off a certain type of way. He says he has no ill intent toward her. And on the surface, that sounds like growth. That sounds like a man de-escalating. But watch the timing. The apology comes after the clips. The apology comes after the content was secured. It is the emotional equivalent of a receipt, proof that the transaction is complete and everybody can go home now. And she accepts it, because she always accepts it, because the apology is the part of the cycle that makes the next cycle possible. That is how these loops work. The cruelty creates the clip, the apology creates the reunion, and the reunion creates the next cruelty. Round and round, and the meter runs the whole time. Now I want to be careful here, because pregnancy is sensitive, and what a woman does with her body is her choice, and I am not here to litigate that. What I am here to point out is the pattern. Because a woman who says, I can end it tomorrow, it will not hurt me, is a woman telling you that she is detached from the life she is carrying. And a woman who is detached from the life she is carrying is a woman who has been so numbed by her circumstances that nothing touches her anymore. Remember what she said in her monologue? I am numb to everything he is. Maybe the tragedy is not that Chrisean Rock is numb to Blueface. Maybe the tragedy is that Chrisean Rock is numb, period. To danger, to consequence, to motherhood, to herself. And that kind of numbness does not come from nowhere. It comes from years of being in survival mode, years of fighting, years of being both the victim and the villain of your own story. And while we are asking hard questions, let us ask one about the platform itself. A stream where 2 people accuse each other of taking lives does not just go viral by accident. It goes viral because the system is built to push exactly that kind of moment. The algorithm does not know what a murder accusation is. It only knows that watch time spiked, that comments exploded, that shares doubled. It reads human darkness as engagement, and it pays out accordingly. So when people ask, why do Chrisean Rock and Blueface keep doing this? The honest answer is, because the machine keeps paying them more for worse behavior. Every time they escalate, the payout grows. Every time they cross a line, the line moves and the check clears. We built a system that rewards the exact behavior we claim to be shocked by, and then we act confused when the people inside that system keep shocking us. They are not broken. The incentive structure is broken. They are just the ones willing to cash the check. And one more thing about that monologue, because there is a line in it that I have not been able to shake. She said, "No man can put fear in my heart." And on the surface, that sounds like strength. That sounds like a woman who cannot be broken. But listen to it again. She is not saying she is safe. She is saying she has been afraid so many times that fear no longer registers. That is not strength. That is scar tissue. And when you combine that with her saying she is numb to everything he is, you start to see the real picture. This is not a love story, and it is not even a business story anymore. It is a story about two people who have hurt each other so many times that they can no longer feel the hurt, and the only sensation strong enough to cut through the numbness is escalation. Bigger fights, darker accusations, higher stakes. And if that is true, then what we watched on that stream was not the explosion. It was the warm-up. And that thought should scare everybody, most of all the two people at the center of it. And this is where we have to talk about Blueface's role in all of this, because it is easy to paint him as the puppet master, and honestly, he makes it easy. He told us with his own mouth that they made $60,000 that weekend. He told her on camera that the stream was the point. He knows exactly what he is doing. He knows that Chrisean Rock at her most chaotic is Chrisean Rock at her most profitable. He knows that when she cries, the views go up. He knows that when she fights, the clips travel. And so he pokes. He calls her masculine. He tells her to calm down, little lady, with a smirk you can hear through the microphone. He tells her she has bad customer service like she is an employee he is about to fire. And every single one of those jabs is calculated, because Blueface is not trying to win the argument. He is trying to win the algorithm. And the algorithm loves watching her lose control. But here is what Blueface did not calculate. And this is the mistake that might cost him everything. He let the argument go too far. He let it drift from funny to dark, from dark to criminal. Because the second Chrisean Rock said, "You have ended lives," the content stopped being content. There is no edit that makes that funny. There is no clip packaging that makes that safe. And now whatever happens next, whether it is a lawyer, a detective, or just the court of public opinion, he has to live with the fact that the mother of his child announced to the world that he is a killer. And he sat there and let it air. Maybe he thought it was just talk. Maybe he thought it was part of the show. But you cannot build an empire on chaos and then act surprised when the chaos burns the building down. And the smoke from this one is not clearing anytime soon. And since we are keeping score, let us be honest about what each of them got out of this weekend. He got the clips, the headlines, the renewed relevance, and his cut of $60,000. All for the price of a few hours of irritation and one accusation he will probably laugh off as stream talk. She got a Burberry bag, a night of affection she had to share with a live audience, a viral moment where she called the father of her child a killer, and a fresh wave of people diagnosing her mental state in comment sections. One of them is playing chess. The other one thinks she is playing chess, but is actually the board. And until that changes, until somebody in her life loves her more than they love the views she generates, we are going to be right back here in a few months covering the next chapter, and each chapter gets darker than the last one. I have been covering this story long enough to know the direction it travels. The question is never if it escalates. The question is only how far. So let me tell you what I think is really happening here. And this is just my opinion, but it is an opinion built on watching every minute of this footage more than once. I think she went into that weekend believing, truly believing, that it was a reunion. I think she saw the shopping, the affection, the hotel, and she thought the fairy tale was back. And I think Blueface went into that weekend knowing it was a withdrawal from the bank, nothing more. And the collision of those two realities is what we watched on that stream. She was fighting for a relationship. He was managing a product. And when she realized she could not win, she did what she always does. She went nuclear. She reached for the most dangerous weapon in her arsenal, which is the truth, or at least her version of it, and she fired it at point-blank range. And now they both have to live with the shrapnel. And the saddest part of all of this, the part that keeps me up, is that there is a child in the middle of this. There is a little boy who is going to grow up and one day type his parents' names into a search bar, and this is what he is going to find. He is going to find his mother calling his father a killer. He is going to find his father treating his mother like an hourly employee. He is going to find $60,000, a Burberry bag, a shadowboxing match in a luxury store, and a woman saying she can end a pregnancy like she is canceling a subscription. That is his inheritance, not the money, because money like that evaporates. The footage is the inheritance. The internet is forever, and Chrisean Rock and Blueface are building a digital monument to their dysfunction that their son will have to walk through one day. And nobody, not one person in either of their circles, seems willing to say, enough. Now I want to address the other side, because there is a real argument that says I am being too hard on these two, that they are just entertainment, that everybody watching is complicit, that the $60,000 proves the audience wants this. And you know what? There is truth in that. Every view, every clip, every reaction video, including this one, is part of the machine. I am not innocent in this economy, and neither are you. But there is a difference between watching a train wreck and selling tickets to the collision. And when you have two people who have admitted they do this for profit, who have admitted the relationship is the product, then the audience is not just watching anymore. The audience is the customer. And customers have power. If the views dried up tomorrow, the dysfunction would dry up with them. So the uncomfortable question is not why do they keep doing this? The uncomfortable question is why do we keep paying them to? So let us talk about what happens next, because this story is far from over. There are three possible roads from here. Road 1, nothing happens. The clips fade, the next scandal drops, and these two do this all over again in 3 months, and we all pretend to be shocked. Road 2, the words catch up. Somebody with a badge and a file decides that a woman saying, on camera, that she knows a man has ended lives is worth a conversation, and suddenly Chrisean Rock is not a streamer anymore. She is a witness, or worse. And Road 3, the one nobody wants to say out loud. Road 3 is that this escalation keeps escalating, because it always does with these two, and the next headline is not about an argument. It is about a tragedy. And I am not predicting that. I am praying against that. But if you have watched this pattern long enough, you know where patterns like this end. And here is the meta loop, the question I am going to leave you with, the one that I do not think has an easy answer. At the top of this video, I asked you if you would take the $60,000. Most of you probably said no. But she said yes, and she said it because for her entire career, chaos has been the only currency that never bounced. She was raised by the internet to believe that her worst moments are her most valuable. So when she sat in that car next to Blueface and felt him pulling away, she did the only thing she has ever been rewarded for doing. She made a moment. She made a clip. She made history. And the terrible, twisted truth is that it worked. We are all talking about her. You are watching this video. The machine won again. So the question is not whether Chrisean Rock is dumb, or delusional, or dangerous. The question is whether any of us, raised in the same machine, would have turned out any different. And honestly, I do not like my answer to that question, and I do not think you will like yours either. That is where I am going to leave it for now. But this story is developing, and based on everything I have seen, the next chapter is going to make this one look tame. So if you want to be here when it drops, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because I am going to be covering every twist of this until somebody finally tells the truth. Drop your theory in the comments, wake up or loyalty, and if you think this is all scripted, I want to hear that too, because the debate is half the story. And if you are new here and you want the full backstory on the Ronny situation that I mentioned earlier, I did a whole breakdown on it, and it connects to this in ways that will genuinely disturb you. That video is on your screen right now. Go watch it, and then come back and tell me if you still think this is just entertainment. I will see you over there. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, the camera is always rolling, so make sure it is rolling on the version of you that you can live with.